Most people think the World Cup is just about soccer. It is not. It is one of the biggest stages for global power. On the field, 22 players chase a ball. Off the field, countries chase something much bigger: image, respect, money, influence, and glory. A goal can change the mood of a nation. A trophy can help a country tell the world, "Look at us. We matter." And a bad defeat can become part of national memory for decades. Jonathan Wilson's The Power and the Glory shows the World Cup as more than a tournament. It is a mirror of the modern world. It reflects war and peace, dictatorship and democracy, rich nations and poor nations, old empires and new voices. It also shows how soccer became a common language for people who may not share politics, religion, or history. So here is the key question for today. Why is the World Cup not just a game, but a global power story? By the end of this video, you will understand three things. First, how politics shaped many World Cups from the very beginning. Second, why some World Cup stories matter more than the final score. And third, you will learn useful English words and expressions, such as tournament, glory, legacy, rivalry, controversy, and diplomacy, so you can talk about sports and history in simple, natural English. Stay with me because the first surprise is this. The World Cup was born with an ideal of peace, but it quickly became a tool for power. Part 1. Not just soccer, the power under the grass. When many people watch the World Cup, they look for goals, stars, and beautiful passes. That is normal. Soccer is exciting because it is simple. The ball goes in, people scream. The ball misses, people hold their breath. But Wilson invites us to look at a deeper layer. A World Cup match is never only a match. It is a story about who gets seen, who gets heard, and who gets remembered. The tournament began in 1930, when FIFA wanted international soccer to have its own stage. Before that, Olympic soccer had carried much of the global meaning, but soccer had grown too large to remain just one Olympic event. It needed a home of its own. Uruguay hosted the first World Cup. On paper, this looked unusual. Uruguay was small. It was far from Europe. Many European teams did not want the long trip across the Atlantic. But Uruguay had reasons to host. It had been strong in Olympic soccer. It wanted to celebrate its national story. It wanted the world to see a confident modern country, not just a small state in South America. This is the first lesson. Hosting is never neutral. To host a World Cup is to invite the world into your living room. You choose the lights. You clean the room. You decide what story visitors should remember. Stadiums become more than stadiums. They become messages made of concrete, grass, and noise. Up next, this idea becomes darker. Because when leaders discovered that soccer could shape national image, some of them used the World Cup not for peace, but for control. Think about Italy in the 1930s. Mussolini's government saw sport as a way to show strength. The World Cup became useful propaganda, which means public messages designed to shape people's beliefs. The idea was clear. If the national team wins, the nation looks powerful. If the players look strong, the political system looks strong too. There is also a softer kind of power. It is not always a dictator shouting from a balcony. Sometimes it is a federation official making a deal. Sometimes it is a city promising new roads. Sometimes it is a country telling visitors, "We are modern, safe, and ready." This is diplomacy through sport. Diplomacy usually means meetings, handshakes, and careful words. But the World Cup adds music, flags, and television cameras. It can make a political message feel like a party. This is where the dream of sport meets the danger of politics. Soccer can bring people together, but it can also be used to hide fear, violence, or weakness. A government can point to a trophy and say, We are great, even when ordinary people do not feel free. The same pattern appears in different forms across World Cup history. During the Cold War, matches carried the weight of rivalry between political systems. East and West, capitalism and communism, old wounds and new borders. All of these ideas could enter a game even when the ball was still round and the rules were still the same. A powerful example is West Germany's victory in 1954. To many fans, it was a sporting upset against the Great Hungary team. But to West Germany, still rebuilding after World War II, it also meant return, dignity, and a new place in the world. A football result could not erase the past, but it could help a nation imagine a future. That is the strange power of the World Cup. It turns a 90-minute match into a national symbol. It gives people a shared sentence. We were there, we saw it, we felt it. But here is the warning. When a match carries too much national meaning, losing can become dangerous. Brazil's defeat to Uruguay in 1950 is remembered not only as a soccer loss, but as a national wound. Brazil expected glory at home. The stadium was full. The country was ready to celebrate. But Uruguay won, and silence fell over a crowd that had already imagined itself as champion. This is not normal sport pain. This is the pain of a national story breaking in public. For English learners, notice this useful expression. More than. We can say, the World Cup is more than a game. We can also say, a trophy is more than medal. This simple pattern helps you explain hidden meaning. So let's quickly review two words. Politics means the struggle for power and public decisions. Image means how a person or country wants to be seen. In this part, the World Cup is not only about soccer, it is about politics and image. And now comes the next question. If power explains why leaders care about the World Cup, why do ordinary people care so deeply? The answer is glory and the human stories behind it. Part 2. Glory and Fate: Human Stories on the Grass. Here is another common misunderstanding. People think the World Cup is emotional because people love soccer. That is true, but it is not enough. The deeper reason is that the World Cup gives human life a clear shape. There is hope, pressure, risk, failure, and a final moment. In normal life, success is often slow and unclear. But in a World Cup match, everything can change with one touch. That is why legends are born there. Pelé is one of the best examples. He entered the World Cup as a teenager and became a global icon. His story mattered because it felt impossible. A young player from Brazil appeared on the world stage and played with joy, speed, and freedom. He helped people connect Brazil with beauty and attacking soccer. Over time, Brazil did not just become a champion. Brazil became an idea: color, rhythm, courage, and flair. This is how a player becomes part of a country's cultural image. This also explains why one match can create a rivalry that lasts for generations. A rivalry is not just two teams wanting to win. It is history repeated through sport. The shirt carries the past. The crowd gives that past a voice. Argentina and England in 1986, Germany and the Netherlands in many eras, Brazil and Argentina across South America. These games feel bigger because old memories stand beside new players. But glory is never clean. It often stands next to pressure. The same stage that lifts one player can crush another. Think of Diego Maradona in 1986. His match against England became one of the most famous stories in soccer history. It had skill, controversy, politics, and memory all inside one game. Argentina and Britain had recently fought a war over the Falkland Islands. So when Argentina faced England, the match carried far more than sporting rivalry. Maradona scored a goal with his hand, and he also scored a brilliant solo goal that many people still call one of the greatest goals ever. In one match, he showed two sides of football, the trickster and the genius. That is why his legacy is so complex. People argue about fairness, but they also remember his magic. Here is the retention point. Keep listening, because in a few minutes we will see how controversy does not destroy the World Cup. In a strange way, controversy often makes the World Cup more unforgettable. Maradona's story also teaches a useful English phrase, two sides of. We can say, Maradona showed two sides of football. We can use this phrase in many topics. For example, technology has two sides, or success has two sides. Now think about Lionel Messi. For many years, the question around Messi was not only, is he great? Everyone knew he was great. The deeper question was, can his greatness become national glory? Club success was not enough. Argentina wanted the World Cup. Fans wanted the final proof. When Messi finally lifted the trophy in Qatar, it felt like the closing chapter of a long story. It was not only about one tournament. It was about time, pressure, age, doubt, and return. This is why the World Cup can feel like a novel. It gives a great player one last chance to complete the story. But the World Cup is not only made by superstars. Sometimes the most powerful stories come from underdogs. An underdog is a team or person expected to lose. The World Cup needs underdogs because they keep hope alive. If only rich and famous teams mattered, the tournament would become predictable. But soccer is low scoring. One mistake, one save, or one brave counterattack can rewrite everything. Cameroon in 1990 showed this kind of possibility. Senegal in 2002 shocked France in the opening match. Croatia in 2018 reached the final and gave a small nation a huge voice. Morocco in 2022 became the first African team to reach a World Cup semifinal. These stories matter because they make the tournament feel open. These stories matter because they make the tournament feel open. They remind us that history is not only written by the strongest. Another underdog lesson comes from teams that do not win the trophy but change the map of attention. When an African, Asian, or smaller European team reaches a late round, millions of viewers suddenly learn a new football culture. The team becomes a bridge. It tells the world, our story also belongs here. This is one reason the World Cup can feel more democratic than many other global events, even when the organization around it is not always democratic. This is one reason soccer became a global language. You do not need to understand every rule to feel the drama. A small team defending against a giant is easy to understand. A young player crying after defeat is easy to understand. A crowd singing for its country is easy to understand. The World Cup turns private emotion into public memory, and that memory can last longer than the trophy itself. Some teams lose, but they are still loved. The Netherlands in 1974 did not win, but its total football became a lasting legacy. The idea was simple to say but hard to do. Players moved as a unit, attacked together, and defended together. The team lost the final, but it changed how people imagined the game. This is a beautiful lesson. Glory is not only winning. Glory can also mean changing the future. For English learners, let's review two words. Legacy means what remains after a person, team, or event is gone. Underdog means someone expected to lose but still brave enough to fight. These two words are useful far beyond soccer. But if the World Cup is full of glory, why does it also create so much anger? That takes us to the darker side: controversy, money, and the changing business of the game. Part 3: Controversy and Change. The other side of the World Cup. Many fans want the World Cup to be pure. They want to believe the best team wins, the referee is fair, and the tournament belongs to the people. That is a nice dream. But Wilson's history reminds us that the World Cup has always lived inside real-world systems. And real-world systems include money, influence, mistakes, and sometimes injustice. Let's begin with referees and fairness. A referee's decision can become part of history. In 1966, England's final against West Germany included one of the most debated goals in World Cup history. Did the ball cross the line? For many fans, that question never fully disappeared. Decades later, technology would enter the game partly because soccer could no longer depend only on human eyes. This is why goal line technology and VAR matter. They are not just tools. They are answers to a long history of doubt. They show the tournament trying to protect fairness in a faster, more commercial, more global age. But technology creates new problems too. VAR can correct some mistakes, but it can also slow the emotion of the game. Fans celebrate, then wait. Players score, then look at the referee. The joy becomes less direct. So the World Cup keeps facing the same hard question. How do we balance fairness and feeling? Keep this question in mind because the same tension appears in business. More fairness, more control, more money, each one changes the soul of the tournament. The World Cup became more commercial as television grew. Color TV helped turn the 1970 World Cup into a visual event. Brazil's yellow shirts, Pelé's smile, and the rhythm of attacking soccer traveled into homes around the world. Later, sponsorship, advertising, broadcasting rights, and global brands became central to the tournament. In simple words, the World Cup became a business machine. This does not mean the emotion is fake. Fans still care, players still dream, but the structure around the dream changed. Every World Cup now involves huge costs, huge contracts, and huge political questions. The bidding process is especially important. Bidding means countries compete for the right to host. They prepare plans, promise stadiums, meet officials, and try to prove they can organize the event. On the surface, this looks like planning. Under the surface, it is also power. Hosting can bring tourism, prestige, and soft power. Soft power means influence through culture and attraction, not force. A successful World Cup can make a country look open, capable, and important. Who gets to host? Who pays for the stadiums? Who profits from the event? What happens to the buildings after the fans leave? But here is the trap. A beautiful tournament can make people forget the bill. Stadiums may be expensive. Workers may face difficult conditions. Local people may wonder why public money goes to a one-month event while schools, hospitals, or housing still need support. So the question is not only, was the World Cup exciting? The deeper question is, who paid, who gained, and what was left behind? These questions became stronger in the modern era. Russia 2018 and Qatar 2022 showed how hosting can be used for international image. A country can stage the tournament to show modern roads, bright stadiums, safe streets, and global welcome. Critics often call this sports washing. That means using sport to improve a public image, especially when serious problems exist behind the scenes. This word is very useful, sports washing. It connects sport and politics in one simple idea. At the same time, we should avoid a lazy answer. It is too simple to say, everything is corrupt, or everything is beautiful. The World Cup is more complicated. A tournament can bring joy and still create waste. It can build pride and still hide problems. It can unite fans and still enrich powerful people. That complexity is exactly why the World Cup is worth studying. Another major change is the growth of the Women's World Cup. For a long time, women's soccer did not receive the same attention, money, or respect as men's soccer. But the Women's World Cup has become a powerful part of the global football story. It shows that the language of soccer is not owned by one gender, one continent, or one tradition. The rise of women's soccer also changes the meaning of legacy. A young girl watching a World Cup today can see a future for herself. She can see strength, skill, leadership, and public respect. That is not a small thing. Sport can expand imagination. So when we talk about the World Cup, we should not only talk about the men's trophy. We should talk about who gets included in the dream. There is also the question of expansion. More teams mean more countries can join the stage. This can make the tournament more global and more open, but it can also make the event larger, more expensive, and harder to organize. Again, the World Cup carries a balance, more access but more pressure. This is the pattern again and again. The World Cup grows, and each kind of growth brings a cost. For English learners, let's review two words. Controversy means a public argument about something people strongly disagree on. Commercial means connected with business and money. In this part, we saw that the World Cup is a place of controversy and commercial power. But after all these problems, one question remains. If the World Cup is political, commercial, and full of conflict, why do we still love it? Part 4: What the World Cup teaches us, why we still care. Here is the final misunderstanding. Some people say, if the World Cup is full of politics and money, then it is not real anymore. But that is too simple. The World Cup is powerful because it is both real and imperfect. It is not outside the world. It is inside the world. It carries the world's beauty and the world's problems at the same time. That is why people keep watching. When a child watches a match with a parent, they may not think about bidding systems or diplomacy. They remember the sound of the room. They remember a goal. They remember a flag. They remember the first time they learned that another country had its own colors, songs, heroes, and pain. This is cultural education without a classroom. This is why a good viewer can be both a fan and a thinker. You can cheer for a goal and still ask who built the stadium. You can enjoy the opening ceremony and still ask what story it is trying to tell. You can love the World Cup without turning off your brain. In fact, the more you understand the hidden layer, the richer the visible layer becomes. The World Cup teaches geography. It teaches history. It teaches names of places that many people might not otherwise know. A fan may first hear about Croatia, Ghana, Japan, Morocco, or Uruguay because of soccer. Later, that name becomes a doorway into culture, language, food, politics, and history. This is why soccer becomes a common language. It does not remove differences. It gives people a starting point. In a bar in New York, a cafe in Paris, a family home in Buenos Aires, or a public square in Dakar, people can understand the same moment. A missed penalty does not need translation. A last-minute goal does not need translation. Tears after defeat do not need translation. But the best way to watch the World Cup is not with blind love. It is with open eyes. We can enjoy the beauty and still ask hard questions. We can admire a champion and still notice the power behind the stage. We can celebrate an underdog and still understand the business system around the tournament. This is a mature way to love sport, and this gives ordinary people a useful life lesson. In life, many public events have two layers. There is the visible layer, the show, the speech, the celebration, the result. Then there is the hidden layer, money, interest, history, and power. The World Cup trains us to see both. A trophy is visible. The system behind the trophy is hidden. A goal is visible. The pressure behind the goal is hidden. A champion is visible. The legacy behind the champion takes years to understand. So the World Cup helps us practice a deeper habit. Do not stop at the surface. This is also useful for English learning. When you explain an event, do not only say what happened, say why it mattered. For example, do not only say, Argentina won the World Cup. You can say, Argentina's victory mattered because it completed Messi's national legacy and gave fans a shared moment of glory. That is stronger English. It has cause, meaning, and emotion. The World Cup also teaches balance. Sport has rules, but life has pressure. Sport asks for fairness, but people seek advantage. Sport creates joy, but business follows attention. None of this is new. The World Cup simply makes it easier to see. And maybe this is why the tournament survives its own problems. We do not watch because it is perfect. We watch because it feels human. Humans want fair rules, but they also make mistakes. Humans want glory, but they also fear failure. Humans want peace, but they often carry rivalry. The World Cup puts all of that in one place. For English learners, let's review two final words. Diplomacy means the way countries manage relationships without direct conflict. Common language means something people from different backgrounds can understand together. In this part, the World Cup becomes a form of diplomacy and a common language. Now let's bring everything together. Here are 6 new ways to watch the World Cup after reading this story. First, do not watch only the ball. Watch the stage. Ask why this country is hosting and what image it wants to show. Second, do not see a champion only as a sports team. A champion often carries national hope, memory, and pressure. Third, pay attention to underdogs. They show why the tournament still feels open, human, and alive. Fourth, treat controversy as part of the history, not as a side note. Referee decisions, bidding battles, and political arguments often reveal how power works. Fifth, notice how business changes emotion. Television, sponsors, and global brands helped the World Cup grow, but they also changed what the event costs and who benefits. Sixth, remember that soccer is a global language. It can cross borders because its emotions are simple: hope, fear, pride, loss, and joy. So the World Cup is not just about soccer. It is about power and glory. Power is the hidden system behind the event. Glory is the feeling people remember. When these two forces meet, a football match becomes world history. That is the main idea of the power and the glory. The World Cup is a tournament, but it is also a mirror. If you look carefully, you can see the story of the modern world inside it. Before we finish, let's review the most useful English from today. Tournament means a sports competition with many teams. Glory means great honor and public praise. Legacy means what remains after a person or event is gone. Rivalry means a strong competition between teams, people, or countries. Controversy means a public argument. Diplomacy means the way countries manage relationships. And one of the best expressions today is more than. The World Cup is more than soccer. A trophy is more than medal. A match is more than 90 minutes. Try using these words when you talk about sports, history, or even your own life. What is your most memorable World Cup moment? And which word did you find most useful today? Let me know in the comments.